little bit under the weather. After I came back from the ride, it was fine, and then I got some sort of cold. So this entire week I've been trying to battle it. I shouldn't really be on the bike, but I just had to get out. We've also had a lot of rain recently. As you guys know, the ST Pan-European started with the ST1300. You know, at the time, in around 1990, 91, they had that boxy Kawasaki Concourse that looks like a Ninja 250, and that's a cool bike. And I like it because it looks like just a bigger version of the Ninja 250 with 4 cylinders and a shaft drive. You know what riding the SD is? It's like floating on a cloud. Hopping. Whoa! Shit. I'm going 70. That guy scared me. There's a big cargo plane going into Andrews Air Force Base. This bike is so deceiving. I mean, I'm going 70 miles an hour and it just feels like I'm going 30. Really, this is not good for my license. You know, the Super 10 Ray at 70, I felt like it was going faster. The wind shook you around a whole lot more, but this thing, it's heavy and it just plows right through the air. ST1100 is beloved, in a way more so than the ST1300. People really love the ST1100s. I had one, I had a 91, and I sold it at a loss because the alternator went out on it, and at the time I had 125,000 miles and I didn't want to change it, so I sold it. I think I sold it for like $1,200. But that bike, those bikes are all very capable of getting the same mileage as these. And a lot of people prefer them because it's kind of like the Goldwing. The ST1100 was more of a touring bike as opposed to this bike, which is slightly more sport. Man, that was something on the road. See, you got to get behind and ride on people's like tire tracks and stay a little bit further behind. Oh my God, look! Blue Angels! No, it's like F-18 Hornets coming out of Andrews. Look at that. They're right over there. That is crazy. I see that a lot. And they look like birds. Let me see if I can see them. There's like 3 or 4, but they're so quick. If you're not paying attention, they just look like vultures in the sky, and then you're like, oh, they made like a weird turn. See, there's a vulture there, and I thought it was them. And I bought a 03. The 03 had that problem, that weave. But, you know, for me, this bike is not really a bike I'm going to do like 120 miles an hour. The top speed of this one is 144. The horsepower of this is, I think, 20 or 30 horsepower less than the FJR. And to me, I prefer this over the FJR. First, I like the looks of it. I like that it's a little bit more touring than the FJR. And I also like the V4 engine. It's kind of crazy that they have this wacky sideways V4. This is when Honda was still taking chances on engines. This engine is a very expensive one to manufacture. Maybe that's one of the reasons they stopped making the SD, but I believe they still make the VFR 1200X that's got a V4, and I think the VFRs, I don't know if they make the VFR 800s anymore. I don't think so, but I know they have the 1200. The SD1100, I had a black one. Everybody loved that bike, and I think the SD Honda guys, they really like the V4 touring machines, and this bike just sounds really good. Even the SD1100 sounded really good. And it's not, you don't get it for the horsepower because this bike on paper doesn't sound that good, but it's kind of like the Super 10 Ray. When you have a Super 10 Ray, it's like 30 horsepower down, or 20 horsepower down on a KTM and BMW. But I take that over those because of the reliability. When you have an under-stressed engine, you have more longevity, and I like that. I like durability over time. I like bikes that don't leave me stranded. So for me, I will sacrifice horsepower all the time. This bike has been proven, the ST1300 has been proven as long mileage type of bikes. You see on Craigslist and Facebook all the time these bikes with 200,000 miles, more typically 120,000 miles. And the thing is, when you get a bike like this that has 120,000 miles, it still has plenty of life left. People go like, oh, it's a 200,000 mile bike, but really it's not. I mean, it's like you can put 500,000 miles on this bike. The only issue is that it eats tires. I did not enjoy having to put all those tires on my bikes. It's a heavy bike and it's got plenty of horsepower, so you're gonna get quite a bit of short-lived tires. And this bike corners really well. You know, corners better, handles better than the ST1300. The FGR handles a little bit better, more powerful, sounds great too. But there's something very unique about this engine. It's the type of thing that you can't really go by paper specs. Because I think the people that live on the paper specs game, they miss out on some incredible machines. And I used to be like that, you know. I used to be all into horsepower. I used to be into GSXRs, R1s, Honda Blackbirds, Hayabusas, and I still love those. But there are bikes that just seem to slip under the radar, and I love that sort of thing. I like bikes that are also the underdogs. This bike, of course, has been overshadowed by Honda's Goldwing. They don't make this one anymore, but it looks completely contemporary, with the exception of some of the, maybe the speed cluster on this bike. It looks really contemporary. And the best thing as well is that it doesn't have all that new gimmicky electronic stuff that you see in most modern bikes. So it doesn't really fail that much. I think these bikes also have a problem with the fuel pumps, and I believe the fuel pump is like, I removed it, I forgot. I think I changed it on my ST1300, the fuel pump. So they do go bad, but Honda fuel pumps have been like that. My Africa Twin, the 750 also went bad. Like, I don't know, I guess they're sourcing things from Germany for fuel pumps, and those things tend to break. I'm not really sure, but I did replace it, and I'm not into replacing stuff. But this type of bike, you get this, and the guys that get the ST1300, they're like, I'm keeping this forever. That's how a lot of people feel about this bike. It's a lifetime bike. You hear that a lot from people. They go like, oh, this is my lifetime bike. This is the bike I'm going to keep forever until I die. And then 2 weeks later, they sell it. You know, they usually last a little bit longer, but this is one of those few bikes that when riders get it, they go like, you know what? I think I'm going to keep this one. Like Honda. You know, I'm not a Honda fanboy. I'm not a brand guy. I like bikes that last. I like reliability, durability, but I'm not like a brand person. If Ducati made great bikes that were reliable and handled great, I'd be all over it. Same thing with every maker. But Honda has always done good with bikes. You know, I can take chances on bikes, buy bikes from the 1970s, 1980s, Hondas that don't work, and with very minimal work, they will just start right up. and they sound almost like brand new. It almost feels like black magic with Honda. That's got 70,000 miles. I think a lot of guys, they go, oh man, that is too many. But really, 70,000 for this bike is kind of like a baby. It's not even a baby, it's more like a fetus. And this one, it's got 25,000. So it definitely was not ridden very much. But a lot of the people in the United States, they do that. They get something cool and then they just put it away. They ride it once in a while. And I love that. I love that about people in the United States, because that basically gets me bikes that I can keep riding. Yeah, I'm gonna turn off my heated vest. The thing that's gone up in price lately are the conversion vans. With the whole van life thing, man, like now you see those conversion vans and they're like $2,000-3,000 for like an old crappy one. But previous to the whole van life fad, it was like, oh, $500 or free, or get it out of my yard. And I don't know if you guys remember, but pre-conversion vans, the fad was tiny houses. Where are the tiny house movement now? It's disappeared. Basically, the tiny house movement, and I loved it too because it was very creative. It was basically mobile homes for hippies. Kind of funny how these fads go in waves. You guys remember cupcakes? Jesus, that was so disgusting. I hate cupcakes. When it comes to ST1300s, avoid the 03. That's the one that had the weird speed thing, speed wobble of death. It's so funny, like when I had the 03, I told people like, oh yeah, my bike weaves around, it's got this weird weave. And the comments from people that had STs is like, oh, your tires, look at your tires, look at your balance of your saddle cases. I've had 40 something bikes and I've loaded them just wherever, however, and I never had an issue with weaving. And by the way, Honda admitted to this. This is not a secret. They were sued and they lost. And then they made some changes, which I am not exactly sure, but yeah, that weave is real on the 03s. I don't think it's, I think they fixed it on the 04s. But man, most of the time I'm riding below 100 miles an hour. I'm not Angry D. Check out his channel. I'll put the link down below. And I'm not Angry D riding like 100 something. Like, I only ride 100 something when I'm not surrounded by traffic. That's how I get those aggressive driving tickets and the reckless speeding tickets. Can you imagine all of these guys doing like reckless driving? They never get in trouble, but I do. As soon as I leave this area, I go into the countryside with just trees. All of a sudden, I'm like #1 criminal ever. Some other really interesting bikes like the PC 800, but I don't know, 800 cc's for that bike. This one is not a slouch, that's the thing. It definitely moves. It doesn't move like a crazy sport bike, and it doesn't have the power of the FGR, but it's right in between. It kind of feels like it's a really good balance. Here's a weird fact about the Honda Silverwing and this. The difference of weight between this and the Silverwing is 91 pounds. That's the ABS version that I have right now is heavier. The difference between the non-ABS version and the Honda Silverwing is 70 pounds. So, isn't that crazy? That's mind-boggling that they made the Silverwing that heavy. But in this stop-and-go traffic, this bike is extremely capable. One time I ran out of battery on the highway like this because I was running all my heated gear and it was snowing. And I had aux lights that were huge. They were like hella PS or whatever. So I was maxing out its capability, and I just got stranded in the middle of a snowstorm on I-270. It's funny enough, I was coming home from work. I was taking the long way home. It's like, this is why you know I'm brain dead. I remember from commuting, I was commuting from Arlington to Maryland every single day on the ST, and it was kind of funny because like you get out of work, man, you just sit on that bike and it just feels so comfortable. That's how I feel about this bike. It's just so comfortable. You sit on it and it's got such mass that it's got a commanding presence on the road. And you get off of work and you like sit on that bike and you go like, ah, feels like home. Tons of, see this guy? Angry D would have given him the finger. That guy. Start getting snow in the area. Sucks.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!